over here. Uh, this is inbuilt clash utility inside E3D, which is you to detect clash, take out some reports, and visually analyze the clash. But it will not allow you to approve clash or assign the clash ownership to some other discipline, uh, or categorize clash report in a better way. So it's just a general clash utility to check the clash and review the clash, but it is not an extensive utility. What our comprehensive product is called Clash Manager, which is not yet installed, and I believe you have a training scheduled at the end of this training, at all the days of the training. In the last, it is scheduled. So that is the Clash Manager, which does much better job. What we are going to discuss today is only the general Clash utility as a part of the model utilities course. When we do Clash Manager training, of course, the things work. In the Clash Manager also, the basics is same, just as the clashes general Clash utility, but it has more extensive report, more features to set some rules and all those things, right? So before I start the Clash, there are some theory we need to discuss. Part of which you already know, and something we'll discuss. Okay. Okay. Types of clashes. First of all, classes. Sorry. No, we will start with the obstruction volumes. So any object in 3D model have some obstruction attribute, and obstruction attribute, for example, let us go here and add equipments and piping. Equipment area 01. Let us turn off the annotations. Okay, equipment is there. Piping. This was for test. I will delete it. And let me turn on the representation for obstruction and insulation. Okay, so you can see there are some excess phase obstruction volume. Some volume for excess phase. Okay. Now you go and check obstruction level. For example, UOBST. Okay, this is not. I have to navigate to primitive. Navigate. So obstruction 2. How about this tube pulling? It is obstruction 1. And some volumes maybe this one. Navigate to primitives. Obstruction 1. I don't have example obstruction 0, but let's see what are these. Just a second. So what does obstruction attribute signify? Obstruction of 2 means a hard obstruction, and it represents a solid element, and it generally means physical entity in a plant, such as piece of equipment, beam, pipe equipment, etc. Obstruction 1, it's a soft volume. Okay, the value represents a volume that is not solid, but should be kept clear for excess. So these are excess phase. why it should be clear? Because somebody by mistake can model something, some pipe going around from these volumes. So that's why these obstruction volume have been modeled, so that if anybody models, it is detected in clash. Okay. For example, escape routes, wall hand wheels clearance, stair headroom clearance, and tube bundle removal volumes. So these are obstruction volumes. Okay. Obstruction zero means no obstruction at all. The value represent freely accessible volume. It is generally used for simplification of structural profiles. I told you structure beams and columns have different profiles, maybe in different levels. So those profile in different levels may be provided a different obstruction value, say zero. They do not provide any kind of obstruction, means it cannot be detected in clash. Obstruction 1 and 2 are detected in clash as hard and soft obstruction, but obstruction 0 is not detected in clash. So if you want to escape any clash detection, for example, you are testing some alternate design for an equipment or a future area proposing around, you don't want to detect it in clash, you can give the obstruction value to those as obstruction 0, the primitive of those elements to be obstruction 0. For piping elements, the obstruction is set in the catalog. You cannot set obstruction here in the design. So obstruction of these primitive, when the elbow is developed in catalog, the obstruction is set directly there. Okay, so but yeah, it has some obstruction. It doesn't mean that it does not have any obstruction or it has obstruction 0. It has some obstruction, but it is defined in the catalog. Okay. So this is about obstruction. Okay. In addition to obstruction types defined by obstruction attribute, insulation is treated as a special obstruction volume. It's a and it is also a insulation clash. When it is insulation is detected in clash, the type of clash is insulation clash. So this volume you see is not an obstruction one volume. This is a special class of obstruction called insulation obstruction. So when we see clash, we will see how it represent in the clash report. If the insulation is clashing. Okay. Now types, the classes of clash. There are three classes of clash, right? One is physical clash, second is touch, and third one is clearance. Whether a clash is a physical clash, touch, or a clearance is depend on some settings of three parameters. These three parameters. Before clash, we have to set these parameters, which are called overlap, gap, and clearance. Based on this only, a clash will be classified as physical clash, touch, or clearance. So overlap, you can now pictorially they have been explained at the bottom. So if your overlap value is say 5 mm, and if two elements are clashing more than 5 mm interference, then it will be a physical clash. Okay. And then if what can be proposed as a clearance means clearance means there's no real clash if the elements are more than the clearance value. Suppose two exchangers are less than 8 mm value, so it will not be a clearance. It will be between touch and overlap. Oh, sorry, it will be between physical clash and clearance, which is called touch. So clearance is given when the actual clearance between the two entities are greater than the clearance value. Here it is 8 mm. And there is another setting, gap. The clearance should be more than 2 mm and less than 8 mm. I informed, I think I wrongly spoke. Uh, there are two settings, gap and clearance. See, the first of all, the clash itself is type of clearance, and then there is a clearance parameter value. So don't be confused. If the gap value is 2 mm and the clearance value is 8 mm, and your gap lies between 8 mm and 2 mm, it is classified as a